Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Cusick. I'm the lead pastor of Journey of Faith, and we're in a series of messages called Next Level. We're looking at some really common areas of life like success and faith and wellness, and we're seeing what Jesus says about these things and letting Jesus take us to the next level in our lives. And today we're going to look at this topic, the topic of influence or power. Quick little story. I've been spending a lot of time at home during this quarantine period, and we've been trying to keep our doors and windows open to kind of let some fresh air in and stuff. And I've noticed a lot of flies going in and out. You know, I'm on Zoom meetings and I'm writing and doing work, and there's all these flies buzzing around. So I finally went online and I got one of these bug zapper. It's very functional, very fun. There's these two sets of wires, and then when you hold down this button, there's like a current that goes through there. You can zap these bugs. So when I first bought this thing, I set it down on our table, and then when a fly would come in, I get up, walk over to the table, pick it up, and I try to find the fly again. And I was finally like, I need to keep this thing right nearby. Now, after my first couple of kills, something started to happen to me. I felt this incredible sense of authority over nature in my house. I had this thing in my hand, and when I zapped a fly, I was like, I have the power! Right. So, ironically or providentially, after about 5 or 10 zaps, there was this strange absence of flies in my house. I mean, no more flies. I think the fly community sent word out like, do not go into that guy's house. That guy is crazy with power. Now, sometimes power does that to people and to us. The more power, authority, leadership we have, it can change us in ways that we didn't really even expect. We might even use the power of our influence just to satisfy our own wants or needs or preferences. And I think we can all think of examples of people with authority and influence who used what they had or are using it in the wrong way. Well, here's the main idea we're going to explore together today. We can have an enormous positive influence. We can use our power and influence for good. Now, being an influencer is really a big thing right now, especially on social media. People are building whole careers on being an influencer. An influencer is someone who has the power to affect decisions of people because of their knowledge or their experience or their lifestyle. But you know, in a way, we're all influencers, right? At school, work, friendships, neighbors, in our culture. Whether you have an official position or not, your words and actions can make a huge difference in the lives of people around you, whether you realize it or not. Can you think of someone in your life that has used their power or influence to impact you in a positive way? Let us know. In the chat, write down that person's name. Now, if there's anyone who used his influence and his power and authority in the right way, it's Jesus. So today, we're going to look at a story from Jesus' life that shows us his approach to influencing others. And here's where we're going to find that story recorded in the Bible. It's in Matthew chapter 20, verses 20 through 28. And we're going to see what Jesus said about how we can be a positive influence in the lives of others and use our power for good. So in this story, Jesus and his disciples are together, and with them is the mom of two of his disciples. And here's what it says. The mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with her sons. She knelt respectfully to ask a favor. What is your request? He asked. She replied, in your kingdom, please let my two sons sit in places of honor next to you, one on your right and the other one on your left. But Jesus answered by saying to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I'm about to drink? Oh, yes, they replied, we are able. Jesus told them, "You will indeed drink from my bitter cup, but I have no right to say who will sit on my right or my left. My Father has prepared those places for the ones he has chosen." And when the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant. So let's kind of pause for a moment and just kind of summarize what's going on in this story. So everyone's gathered together with Jesus at this event, and everybody gathered there believed that he was the long-awaited Jewish Messiah that would eventually influence and have power over the entire world. And this mom, like most moms, wants the best for her boys. So she asks Jesus to give them influence and power in his future kingdom on earth. And he says to the three of them, "You don't know what you're asking." Now, when I read this, I also thought he was going to say, "Guys, did you ask your mom to come ask me about this?" So anyway, Jesus is like, "Are you willing to suffer what I'm going to suffer?" He uses a euphemism of drinking a bitter cup, which in Hebrew literature is a symbol for experiencing God's judgment. So Jesus is saying, "I'm going to suffer because of the sins of the world. Can you do that?" By the way, leadership and suffering are always connected in Jesus' teachings. And the disciples innocently and ignorantly say, "Yes, we'll suffer with you." I was thinking about this. I can imagine Jesus saying to me, "Are you willing to sacrifice with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah." But like them, I really have no idea what he's asking of me. Now, it says at the end that the other 10 disciples heard what was happening and they were angry. And we don't think that they were angry because they thought James and John were being proud for asking Jesus for power. We think they were angry because James and John got to Jesus first. Here's the point. They were thinking about influence and power all wrong. So he gives them this next level thinking. It says, Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and the officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man," referring to himself, Jesus, "came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many." Now, this would have been jarring for Jesus' disciples. Here's why. Most of them were lower income people from a religious minority group, and the people ruling over them were a colonizing foreign power that was immoral and worshiped idols. The people Jesus was influencing wanted nothing more than to see their corrupt government overthrown so they could be in power. They were thinking, if we follow Jesus, one day we'll be in power. And in this way, isn't history really a series of different groups vying for power? But Jesus drops this leadership philosophy on them. He says, whoever wants to become great must be a servant. Whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Power and influence are not about serving ourselves. It's about serving others. And the disciples must have been like, wait, I'm a slave. I'm not in charge. I'm trying to get out of being a servant to other people. What Jesus was doing was confronting some myths and misunderstandings that they had about power and influence. And maybe what they believed is similar to what we might believe ourselves. I wrote down a few, and maybe you can relate to them. Here's the first one. We say to ourselves, I need to get into that other group or position. This is when we think, if I'm really going to have influence, I need more followers. I need to look like those people. I need to get into that school, get that position at work, get more sales, get into that inner circle of friends. And for some of you, this quest is the biggest issue in your life, and it's soul damaging. The great Christian thinker and author C.S. Lewis, he wrote an essay called The Inner Ring, and he said that we're often trying to get to that next ring of influence. He said our pursuit of the inner ring is toxic. He said this, the quest for the inner ring will break your hearts unless you break it. Jesus wants to redefine our quest for influence. Here's another myth. We say to ourselves, if someone else wins, I lose. This is based on a scarcity model. If someone else makes money, that's money I could have had. That's not actually how money works. Or if they're successful, then I'm not. That's victim thinking. Jesus is saying our job is to help others win. I was watching this video the other day about runners at the end of a race. You've seen stuff like this. Here's the video. This guy's hardly able to make it. This guy runs past and then says, I'm going to turn back around and help this guy. There's this moment. Let's freeze it right here. That's the moment of decision. That's the moment each one of us has where we have to stop and say, is the race of life about me or is it about us? And we live in a world that categorizes people in two columns, winners and losers. And Jesus wants to redefine our idea of winning and losing. Here's one more. We say, I can't appear weak. Some of us learned early on that if we appear weak, we lose power. But that's not really true. Also, sometimes when we feel weak, we can become over-controlling and overprotective. But we don't have to. Admitting that you don't know things, recognizing limitations, being honest about shortcomings, those are signs of strength and self-knowledge. It also helps you to be able to surround yourself with other people who have strengths in other areas. And this chips away at that lone leader model that we might still have. And when we're weak, that's when God can show his strength through us. So Jesus wants us to redefine how we see weakness. So here's a couple of ways we can have an enormous positive influence. Here's the first one. We can help promote others. A couple of weeks ago, I was heading to church to film a message, and I realized I had one of my wife's long hairs in my sock. And so every step I took, it would get more tangled in there. And so I called her and I said, hey, one of your hairs is wrapped around my big toe. And she said to me, that's just a little reminder that I'm with you wherever you go, choking your freedom. Which I thought was really funny because my wife is like one of the most empowering people in my whole life. But what Jesus was teaching is that power and influence are not about choking freedom, but about promoting people. He says, look at all the top-down power structures that kind of exist in the world. And he says, you know what, we're going to do it different. We're going to do it this way. The ones with the most power and influence are there to elevate and celebrate and promote other people, not limit them or control them. Now, there is an important note here, though. Being a positive influence doesn't mean just empowering people to do whatever they want or whatever will make people feel happy or whatever their body is craving or whatever might temporarily relieve their stress or their pain. Being a positive influence also means challenging people to not give in to temptation, to not give up, to not take the easy way out of doing what's right. I want to challenge you to do something. Promote someone above yourself this week. What would that look like for you? This week, don't prioritize your needs and desires and preferences. Put someone else first. Let someone else have more time to talk. Let them take credit for a compliment. Give someone a parking spot. Compliment them in public. Give Give someone the authority to make an important decision. As a church, we put unchurched people in front of us. We figure starting or restarting a relationship with God is tough enough. So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to find and follow Jesus. So Jesus is calling us to the next level in our power and leadership. We can be an enormous positive influence. First, by promoting others, and second, by this. We can lead by example. My daughter's doing high school online right now, and I asked her recently, do you have any idea of what you'd like to do for a living when you grow up? And she said this, based on what interests me or which teacher I have. She said that because she has this great biology teacher. His name is Mr. Lockwood. And his life and teaching makes her really drawn to the sciences. I don't know if she's going to go down that road, but Mr. Lockwood is leading by example and influencing hundreds and hundreds of future leaders in the sciences. And this is what Jesus is talking about. People looked at Jesus. They watched his life. They watched how he treated hurting people, how he stood up for injustice, how he navigated challenging questions. And through that, people got a picture of what God was like. And sometimes we're tempted to appeal to our title or our position. I'm the boss, I'm the parent, I'm the decision maker. But the best way to influence people is by showing, not telling. You want your children to be more kind? Be kinder to them. You want people to follow Jesus? You follow Jesus. You want the country to learn how to have thoughtful discussion on important issues? Model it yourself. Jesus said that the leaders around you lord their authority over people, but I want you serving. And I think this idea really stood out to one of the disciples in particular that was there. His name was Peter. And I think he made a note of it himself because we have a letter written by Peter almost 40 years later giving advice to people who have influence and power. Look what he wrote. You are eager to serve God. Don't lord it over people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. When people see you, what do they learn about Jesus? People are coming to conclusions about Jesus by the way you live, by what you post, by how you talk, by how you respond to people. And I want to challenge you this week to do this. Show someone God's love in a tangible way. And what would that look like for you this week with the people that you're interacting with at home, in your neighborhood, at work? And I go so far as to say this, I want to dare you to show God's love in a tangible way to someone that you don't really like. Jesus said, it's easy to love those that we love and those that agree with us. Try loving someone you disagree with or someone you consider an enemy. I'll tell you what I'm working on. I've shared this before, but I've been trained in debate. I know how to win an argument. I can win it fairly and gently. I can also win it by cornering people and kind of embarrassing people because a lot of the time I know their side of the argument better than they do. If I'm not careful, I'll win the argument, but I'll lose the relationship. So showing love to somebody in a tangible way for me means being more gracious. It means affirming people rather than silencing them. Trying to find middle ground rather than controlling people with my arguments, and maybe not having to have the last word. And sometimes I'm actually losing arguments by choice because I realize that the mission of Jesus is actually bigger than what we're currently arguing about. But that's really hard for me because I've been trained to win. How can you show someone God's love in a tangible way this week? We can have an enormous positive influence. Jesus said, if you want to become great, serve people. How? 2 ways. Promote others above yourself and lead by example. Be the kind of person that God will entrust with more influence. Let's rethink our idea of power and follow Jesus' example of sacrificial leadership. I hope this week you'll have a great opportunity to talk about this and ideas related to it in your life groups. Let me pray for us that God would shape and reshape our idea of influence and how we're impacting others. God, thank you for the influence you have given us. The people around us whose lives we can impact with our words, with our posts, with our lives. Thank you for the amazing example you are, Jesus, to give us a picture of who God is. Help us to be an example so other people can get to know more about you through our lives. And help us to sacrifice. Help us to lay down our needs and desires and preferences and promote other people to use the power and influence we have to celebrate and elevate and empower people to a closer relationship with you. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.